Good evening, Uganda, and welcome to the show On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. After almost 9 years of adjudication, the Supreme Court pronounced itself on the case involving the General Court Martial. The case had been filed by the former Member of Parliament from Nakawa Division, the Honorable Michael Kabazeguruka, challenging the General Court Martial that civilians should not be tried in that court. And now the Supreme Court has pronounced itself. Unfortunately, those incarcerated by the General Court Martial are still in jail. What next after the High Court pronounced itself? That is our focus tonight. Men of substance in Uganda who are joining me to discuss this very important topic about the General Court Martial and the Supreme Court's pronouncement on how things should move. Let me introduce them. I have a senior citizen, Captain Francis Babu. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening on this hot day. Today was a very hot day in town. And then I got something very interesting. When the Europeans, the Puritans were going to America, they went with Mayfair. I was wondering what Trump will take to go to Gaza. So, so we are waiting to see whether Trump will have a Mayfair to go and start the Gaza Riviera.
Are you taking him seriously?
Yes, I take the man seriously as the President of the United States.
Oh my God. and we have a former Member of Parliament representing Uganda in the East African Legislative Assembly, and also Vice Chairperson or Vice President of the Democratic Party, a legal advisor of the Bavandimwe, the Banyarwanda community in Uganda.
That's better.
Umubano. Let me call it. I was testing your alertness. You're quite alert. Of the Umubano, yes. Honorable Frederick Mukasambede. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, my brother. I greet my senior. First of all, of course, good evening, viewers. He has also. By the way, watching the United States, you may think there is anything to joke about, but when you look at the actions of the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk, and what it is doing, everybody is on the run. Civil servants are actually now running to court, but they have been given 10-day leave. And by the way, there is a problem.
The judge has also put an injunction on
in some of the states, because of course we have got a cap, a 10-day cap, but some had been given paid leave beyond the 10 days. And so I can tell you that everybody is now running left, right, and center. You know that ultimately Trump has also...
So the immigration is terrible.
The judicial system is under siege because he has definitely
And it has serious global ramification, by the way.
Yes.
And that's the seriousness part of it.
The United States, by the end of his 4-year term, will not be the same. The Supreme Court, which ultimately has the highest decision to make under their judicial system, of course is under siege by the Trump administration. You know that a lot of reversals are likely to take place. Of course, there are claims of amendments like the 14th Amendment that are being violated and all that. But I can tell you that Trump has got justifications. He said the United States is not a charity. We cannot use taxpayers' money to pay for costs of governments of other taxpayers. And he has actually obtained justification from home. So he has diverted, skedaddled from the other area, United States imperialist tendency, and is explaining it using the increased parts of the nationals. So clearly, the nationals are...
If you spend about $20 billion, maybe through USAID,
yes,
and which is about maybe 1% of your GDP or even less, how much money do you get out of the influence you exert on countries around the world?
You know,
but there's a monetary gain to it.
They have given a clear divide. How many million shillings going to Uganda for LGBTQ? And you see, he is actually saying that material that we have banned here cannot continue to be sponsored by taxpayers outside here. And you know, he's making fun. It's a farce. But he's using examples that are completely believable. Obviously, we cannot be briskly, we cannot say that Trump is correct. He's not brimming with correctness, but I can tell you that what he's doing, he's moving. He's asking profit and loss account over what we are doing. When we are managing all Garrison is governing and protecting Japan, what is the earning? When we do this, how much do we gain? When we are doing this, how much accrues? And when you now face...
running it like America Incorporated.
Yes. So Americans that have nothing to eat cannot be told that, anyway, part of what you should have eaten has been given to Yugoslavia. They can't accept that.
Okay, gentlemen, we began with the day.
Very interesting. But what is interesting, he's playing also a game.
Yes.
The things he wants, he's using the economy as a frontal curtain,
yes.
but the things he's doing behind are also not very nice. For example, ICE, the immigration thing, or he's even arresting American citizens. So the whole thing is not a joke.
And when they made the fun,
yes.
When Trump said that actually American jobs had been taken by immigrants, people said, yeah, it is true. Elon Musk has just taken one, your job. So,
but it's nice to talk about this. I'm sorry, but we entered into your topic, but I think Africa has to realize that politics played anywhere in the world is virtually the same.
You know, but I think it is also not very reasonable for us to actually outsource the job of keeping Ugandans alive. I'm talking about in the sector of HIV and AIDS. And you let the Americans put almost 90% of the money to sustain people, 1.5 million people, because what's our job of the government?
Did you hear what former President Uhuru said?
No.
He said, the United States is not your country. You don't pay their taxes. And as far as I'm concerned, why are you saying that Americans have really taken their money? Please, pay your bills.
That's what I'm saying. At the point, it is unreasonable for a country like Uganda
yes.
to let the Americans pick the bill, almost over 80% in the sector of HIV and AIDS. Because they put in $400 million,
yes.
and the government is putting about $70 million.
You ever heard something called puppet master? This is where puppet master comes in. The other day, puppet master went and told everybody who is fighting in the Lake District, stop it, and they did stop. It's a puppet master. He's controlling Africa. He's a colonial power.
It is a whole system.
Who pays the piper calls the tune.
Calls the tune. Yeah, actually, that's the best.
Actually, the system is called the political puppetry.
That's right.
Or muppetry.
That's right.
Where there is a controlling effect.
The muppetry one is worse.
but what Fred is saying, after 4 years
yes.
of the Trump administration, the world won't be the same.
Yeah, but this is what is going to happen. In the actual sense, the whole world has been changing every so many years. Now, this is the epoch of change, and it's going to happen.
But a suggestion that the Gazans should get out and then you create a
That's why I told you that
you own it.
I'm looking for the Mayflower.
It's a bit it hinges on the borderline madness.
No, that's going a little bit far.
He's showing you that what are the intents and purposes of your occupation.
Did you see how Netanyahu was so happy? Because Netanyahu has been fighting to get rid of the Gazan, and he can take it as Israel. So what this man is saying is exactly what Netanyahu wanted.
Sweet music to
and when he laughs, by the way, biblically, we have got the parable of the claimant of a kid.
That's right.
The one that supported the cutting into two of the child.
That's when the wisdom of Solomon came out clear.
So that wisdom can also be contemplated under.
But by the way, he wants to make a French Riviera. He says it will be the most beautiful place in the world. So we will not be going to France, we will be going to Gaza.
but who will be taxing him?
I think
by the way, did you know that Gaza, into the sea, is one of the richest in the world? It's got both gas and petroleum, and Shell has got a contract. And the former Prime Minister of Britain's father-in-law, has got shares in it. Let's go ahead.
It's resources, and resources.
That is what we call prebendo politics. It also applies everywhere. And like Captain had said, everywhere, because we are here to give analysis, and I hope we don't get there.
But
it looks like...
But we have our own Trump as well. Clear disruptor. Same mentality, same method. I suppose. And probably same power.
Or maybe we're going to get a Trump soon.
Most likely.
Well, most likely. Because now anything is possible. Gentlemen, the Supreme Court just pronounced itself.
I'm going to give my learned friend to start by giving us, because I've not read the whole judgment.
Yes.
I've been getting bits and bits. He must have read it.
So I'm sure you have. Almost after 9 years. The first time, I think it was 2016, when the Honorable Michael Kabaziguruka, who had been arrested and charged in the court-martial, went to court, the Constitutional Court.
Let me get one point very clear. The Chief Justice didn't like that. He said for us it's been 8 months.
I know. Well,
him as a Supreme Court.
But when the case started was 2016.
Oh yeah. I understand where you're coming from here.
Yes, and of course the Constitutional Court agreed with him, and the Attorney General had to appeal. Now the verdict came out. So what do you make of this, Honorable Fred?
First of all, I think for the benefit of the viewers, a lot of lawyers have been using legalese to interpret a decision of the court, which in my opinion really wouldn't be beneficial to the population.
Correct.
I would want personally to use this exact decision to interpret to the country that the framers of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda were nationalists. All that you are seeing is an interpretation basing on provisions of the Constitution that have not yet been tampered with. All the provisions. By the way, if you want to understand the quality of our members of the Constituent Assembly, I am even happy I am with one here. By the way, we used to run from school just to form part of the gallery here, in order to be able to witness the debates of the Constituent Assembly. I can tell you, there are people who would categorize, and Honorable Babu, I have never told you, we used to categorize people with the best accents, and it was you and the late Emmanuel Pinto.
Yes.
Now, you had almost the similar accent. Then we would also look at people that would use, of course, gymnastics. Then we would do... Honorable Kanyehamba used to stand up and say that the quotation given by my colleague was from the book, and in fact that book was written by me. So as children, we still remember. I can tell you, these are people that had the forecast of the better country.
Yes. Really a nice man.
Yes. Yeah. They had a proper forecast for the country. And if you want to get the intents and purposes of their job, look at two things of the Constitution majorly: the preamble and the national objectives and the directive principles of state policy. You see, all those that have attempted to amend the Constitution, I've left out much of that, but that is the correct basis for the constitutionality that Uganda had to enjoy afterwards.
Actually, they're answering the nuisance of the country, the problems.
So that Constitution had an article, Article 210. It gave Parliament powers to enact a law for purposes of establishing institutions and discipline of the Uganda People's Defense Forces. So clearly, when Parliament is given a role to play, that role is played within the precincts of the powers given to it.
By the Constitution.
By the Constitution. That article does not possess powers available for purposes of interpreting any law you are enacting within the meaning of a private person, within the meaning of a civilian person. Because whether you have been caught with a gun in actions of criminality, if that is not a proper procedure for recruitment into the army, it cannot be understood as if now you should be tried by an army institution. So it can't be a disciplinary measure. It is like Mr. Kamara here. If you left, for example, working with NTV, you left, you no longer work with them, but along the way, while doing some other things, you are still possessed with a T-shirt marked NTV. The head of human resource here cannot summon you for a meeting. It is very impracticable. Those could be now extraneous courts that would try you in terms of impersonation, doing defamation, and all that. So the objects of the framers of the Constitution knew that every organ and institution of the country had to evolve its own judicial system that would manage its own self. But basing on principles enshrined under the Constitution. Fair hearing. Fair hearing cannot be restricted to civilian authority only. Fair hearing also should be buttressed even in the army. Why? But when you look at the preamble, the framers of the Constitution gave a historicity of the problems that the country befell. And some of them were because of the actions of the army. So they decided, recognizing the past, recognizing criminality, let us even establish army representatives in parliament. It doesn't matter, they can be listening posts, but once they form part of decision making, we will not turn around and find them establishing a coup d'etat in Uganda as a means of administration. That is number one. Then, now going forward, when you look at the decision of the Supreme Court, of course, there is also an area where they did not handle properly. Because once you have dissected a court of the nature that it is partial, it is incompetent, it is not formed by those that actually have got the capacity to adjudicate using the law, that democracy cannot ensue in such a court. Now, when ultimately you say that now, a decision given now can only be effectual on matters to do with one, the parties, and two, ongoing cases, and that material cases that were decided, those ones are the subject of collateral review, not retrospective review. Now, so when now, because now that one has got an indirect inclination towards the expiry of human rights, that they have got an expiry date. That because, for example, your decision had been taken, there is no provision for appeal, and accordingly, once you are serving a sentence of 20 years, the subject of a wrong court, we have no business with you. Now, I think that area, they ought to have covered it, in my opinion. But when you look at the advisory orders,
people can still seek redress through the legal channels, again through the court systems.
Which systems? I can tell you that once a matter has been thoroughly concluded, it is very unlikely that you can obtain justice, where now the Supreme Authority, which is the Supreme Court, has given a none. Very, very unlikely. What are you going to do? You can suffer limitations, because we have got a Limitation Act. It gives details on how, because I cannot breach your contract. And after 7 years, you turn around, go to court, and say that you are now suing for breach. That one can suffer limitation in terms of time. Finally, the advisory orders, I think that is something that, of course, government should look at. It is not that they should remove, and I have seen government leaders, a lot of them now almost axiomatically bashing and lambasting the court, as if the court did anything in bad faith. There was an advisory order that for you to establish a better court, it does not matter. That court can be hinged as one of the divisions of the High Court. It can be a substantive division of the High Court, like we have got a High Court International Crimes Division.
That's the one I was talking about.
Yes. Yes. So there is no business having a court where the appointing authority appoints everybody, including prosecutor, even those that are suspects were appointed by the same, judges the same, incompetent at that. I can tell you that is not. And now that points to what was the first speech that the president gave in Uganda, 1st January 1986. Because
this is not a mere change of guards,
yes,
but a fundamental change.
And part of what he talked about included disciplining the Uganda People's Defense Forces. He actually also talked about his discovery that even criminals can be addressed by diplomacy. Those are contents of his speech, and interpreting that actually what took place was not a mere change of guard. So I think even soldiers deserve justice. We can benchmark on very good practices and not the wrong practices that were benchmarked, for example, from Egypt and Tunisia, while forming our own UPDF Act.
Captain Francis Babu.
Yes.
Many have called this kind of a landmark kind of court decision, and many have said yes, civilians cannot find justice in that court, and even they have questioned the competence of the people in the court. That some of them have no legal knowledge, with all respect. Actually, the judge used a very flowery language, comparing himself as somebody with a legal background, going to a theater and operating and doing a liver transfer.
No, lawyers are trying to use flowery language. My brother here is fantastic with the flowery language. So that's not nothing. But I think I like the way he started it, by giving you the Constitution and the problems we had when making that Constitution. Our past history, our problems, the nuisance that existed, the making of the Constitution, all those things are there. And actually, I'd like to thank Onyango. He wrote a beautiful article in the Monitor, which I read, which talked about the British, the first government of Uganda, and so on and so forth. The things that have happened in this country. People have been shot here using some sort of justice systems. People have been shot at the clock tower. People, those kind
firing
of
squad, public executions.
That's right. These have happened. So, let me start. I agree we should not have civilian in a military court. That one I agree with. However, there are certain things we should look at, and look at them very, very carefully. As much as we are in a nation, this thing has opened the eyes of everybody. One of the things that I did after listening to this, I tried to find out how the other military courts work in the world. And I took an example of the United States. Looked at their military court. Everybody in that court is an advocate of the state where that court is. They have one in the Navy, they have one in the Army, they have one in the Air Force. And I was very impressed. Their judges are actually judges. So that's another area that made me think, wait a minute. Maybe apart from what we are saying that the military court is incompetent, what have we done to make it competent? In other words, have we sat down and said, listen, that military court is okay, but it's not good enough, and this should have been done by my brothers who are in the justice system. They should have advised government. And therefore, that court should also be made competent. Even now, after all these problems, it should be made competent. That's point number one. Point number two, the president has got his views also. And sometimes, I like us to listen to both sides of the story. Whilst everything we've said is correct about the judgment and all the things that went, he says, wait a minute, I'm not talking about the ordinary civilian. I'm talking about that civilian that has crossed the line, has become subversive. Now, that is his view, the president's view, that people who have become subversive to a nation should be tried in a military court. That is his view. The question is, how do we discuss that? And I think as we build a nation, this is something important that we should discuss, because even the biggest countries in the world, like the United States, they have got Guantanamo Bay. All right? Now,
but if you realize Guantanamo, majority, if not all of them, were not even Americans.
I know that. I know that. That's what I'm saying. They went even to other countries to bring them. But what I'm trying to say is that this has opened the eyes of everybody. The president has got his view, and he's not saying everything in that judgment is wrong. He's only saying there's something, like he's saying, there's something they missed out. He's saying, you are still missing a point. This military court has helped us in areas where we could not overcome the problems that are in this country. Now, this is something we should sit down and discuss carefully.
But if that was the case, Captain Francis Babu,
yes,
there are people who are notorious, who have taken guns, allegedly, to fight the government of Uganda, including a gentleman called Jamil Mukulu, who was the commander of the Allied Democratic Force in the Congo, accused of even killing the children of Kichwamba and many other people. He's being held. He's being tried by civilian court, and I think they're doing a good job. There are people, the Al-Shabaab are suspected of having bombed Kampala in 2010, killing 70 people, using bombing Kampala. These are real terrorists in a civilian court, and he's handling them so well.
Yes. Now,
so why would you think these Nupu boys, and then
maybe the president?
Kamara, that is part of that discussion. Why this group here and why that group there? That should be part of the discussion I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm saying, yes, okay, Mr. President, you've got a good point, but why do you have this? You've just brought it up. Why do you have a different? Why are you selective? Then, of course, I'm sorry to say this. Our politics is also not very nice. People bring politics in this whole debate, and that politics really leaves a lot of us confused. But basically, this judgment which was made has helped us a lot, has helped us to open our eyes, to understand it. It is not only the lawyers who understand it. I don't want civilians to be taken to military court. Why should they be taken there? But then the president said, wait a minute, I'm not talking about that civilian, I'm talking about this civilian.
Who has crossed the line.
Who has crossed the line.
And the role of the Attorney General was supposed to be advising the president that there is a difference between trial and sentencing.
That's right.
That the wrongfulness of a criminal is answered by the sentence that criminal gets, not the character of trial that the criminal goes through. Trial goes through the weighing scale of justice. There is no way.
But does that court, does it have a weighing scale of justice?
That is what we are saying, that the president needs to know.
Before even go to sentencing, is the process right? Is the process justified?
For him, by the way, and just like the captain is saying, he believes there is a degree of guilt that should be presupposed. We call it mens rea. The frame of mind. A murderer.
The flowering language.
There's supposed to be a presumption of innocence.
There is a murderer.
But there's supposed to be
for him,
presumption of innocence.
That is it. That is it. But for him, a murderer and somebody that has administered battery, somebody who has slapped twice somebody, and the other who has murdered the other. According to the president, these people can't be tried in the same court. Now, it is okay. You may actually, what should accrue is a different sentence, basing on the state of mind, frame of mind, intention, and the acts done by a person. You see, two people can lead to death of a person. The first person can actually slap somebody out of defense, but the person you have slapped had a heart attack that ultimately falls down out of fright and dies. The postmortem report can come. Of course, causation will indicate that he slapped the person and who ultimately died. But the report would look at cardiac arrest. That cannot be caused by the slap directly. But there is somebody who sharpens the knife for a whole week waiting for that person, insisting that head, you will not have it in the next 48 hours. Now, after that 1 week, goes ahead, executes, cuts off the head, and even checks to see whether the person is completely dead. Now, the degree of guilt, the mens rea, the intention of these two people is not the same. Now, that cannot be determined by way of which court the two attend, but the sentence. That this one is sentenced to life, the other one can be sentenced to a period for manslaughter. This one for murder, the other one for manslaughter. So, you see, the president is not an advocate, it's not a lawyer. The role of the Attorney General is to advise the president, telling him that, well, somebody who actually administers the criminality using the gun is not the same as somebody administering criminality using an arrow. But both cannot qualify to be members of the Uganda People's Defense Forces. Accordingly, they can all go to the High Court, and the High Court has a penal code that we operate with. It canvasses all of those crimes, including crimes against humanity, including... So the president needs to be told that even when actually you want to try soldiers that have been rebellious, the court itself now must be manned by professional judges, because professional advocates will appear. The moment an advocate appears before a person seized with the powers to take a decision over criminality, and the more an advocate argues the law to the discontent and the ignorance of the other chairperson, in my opinion, all advocates are going to be seen within lenses of contempt. And that is why they are all being imprisoned for contempt of court. Because the chairman of the General Court Martial believes that somebody was arrested from Kenya, engaging in such criminality, and Afande is of the view that he's guilty. Now, who is this lawyer? Telling me.
And in the military hierarchy, you're supposed to listen to that order.
Yes.
That's Afande,
Yes.
what he has said already
We are also
is what you're going to follow.
We are also saving the army from future criminality, because now we are guided by the Nuremberg precedent. It is no longer safe for you to have obeyed orders. The orders must have been lawful in order for culpability not to follow.
Individual liability.
Yes. So there is now individual liability. We don't want a situation where all our soldiers, once retired, shall be picked one by one for purposes of answering for charges that emanated from orders of superiors.
What they did in the execution of their duties.
Yes. So we are assisting the country to move on all fours.
Captain Francis, what do you make of justice. The unanimous decision taken by court that all of them, agree?
Oh, by the way, I listened to them very carefully, and some of the things we're talking about now actually came in some of the judgment of the other judges.
Yes.
Everything we're talking about here, it actually came out. That's why I'm saying it opened our eyes. Now, after opening our eyes, and we know where the truth is, how do we build this country, even build these courts? Because we are building a nation. And then this is where I think people get this wrong. That's the president's view. Can we sit down with the president and the Attorney General, like he has said very clearly, and look at these different facets? I've just told you about forming a court that is a military court with the qualified people. How do the others work? The military court in the United States is under who, for example? How is it appointed? Now we want to look at all this. And by the way, and I want to say this very clearly, even the lawyers are not angels.
Of course.
They are not angels. They also make mistakes. So the other day I had the Minister of Justice talking about our local justice system. Before even the British came, and even when the British came, we still have our local justice system by elders.
Yes.
And we even had one for LCs, if you remember. Now, the question now is, why do we have mob justice? These are questions you people should start answering, because they are saying we are not happy with this system we have. Therefore, we take it
courts are not
in
giving
our
them
hands.
justice.
Yeah, we are taking it in our hands. So we need to find out, and we need to sit down and get things that can work for us. This is a nation. This is a good judgment. It has opened our eyes. Anybody who is a good debater would use this one to debate for something better, not to how do I put it? Look for scapegoats. Not to accuse, but to find solutions to the problems. These are the nuisances we've got. How do we get rid of? How do we get our constitution to start working? Because he has quoted our constitution. That means we did a good constitution. We are not that badly off as Ugandans. And therefore we can come out with even better.
So, okay, Honorable Mbide, the constitution starts working with the people. And the constitution, according to the president, and the reality is that's the voice of the people. That's how Ugandans want to be governed. And when the president is being sworn in, he's actually swearing in to defend and uphold the Constitution.
Yes.
And the Constitution now, in that petition, it says this is how things should be. And somehow the president wants to disagree. But you're disagreeing with something for which you swore to hold and defend.
Still, for me, I get to the role of the Attorney General, because the briefing to the president needs to be done by a lawyer of a judgment of a court. Otherwise, the president is a losing party in that case, merely because he is the head of state, not that he has got personal interest in a matter that has been adjudicated upon.
This one he might have.
Probably, who knows, he might have had. The president needs to be, because I saw he wrote that this country is not being led by judges. It is correct. Power belongs to the people. But the entirety of that provision includes that who shall exercise it within the meaning of the Constitution. Now, meaning the Constitution divides these powers that are actually wielded by the people, but amongst institutions of power that are actually granted such power, the three arms of government. And the people exercise that power, by the way, in a very short period of time. If uninterrupted, it will definitely belong to them. during the voting process. But you know that sometimes all those that are competing with government, sometimes at the end of an election, are either on police bond or bail. So the amount of power wielded by the people during that period of time, qualitatively analyzed also as good, there is a debate. The president needs to be told that this constitution actually doesn't give him supreme authority over things that it has actually given to other entities to manage. Justice is given to the judiciary, legislation is given to the assembly, and of course he has executive powers to also exercise. The problem is that we have now had a hodgepodge of intermeddling using the powers of the executive. We now even have persons that are not within the formal realms of employment, but that have got power. And in fact, the Europeans call them the eminence gris. These are persons that sometimes even have, they even run convoys with silence, they have a right of way, they can arrest, they determine appointments, but they don't have formal employment within the meaning of government structures. Once that happens, of course, that abuse establishes a problem. That they begin now to run a system.
And people like those may find they have real powers.
Of course.
De facto power. The rest are what in Buganda could say Chugumaza, but the real power.
Yes. It's called palace politics.
Now, they have intermeddled in the politics of the country. We have, by the way, some of the best legislations in the world. I can tell you, emanating from our constitution. But implementation of such legislations by our own authorities has been hampered by the eminence gris, those that actually wield the power. First of all, they have accessibility to the president.
The Americans call them hunger zone.
They started historical as lobbyists, but now they are very, very...
Don't you think Elon Musk...
When you see Elon Musk, of course, he's not anywhere within the meaning of an elected or appointed leader.
The entire system.
But so such persons have... Do you know that we used to have entrepreneurs here in Uganda, and this is why we are also equally getting a problem with our economy.
That's right.
Now we have tenderpreneurs. Now, and they are all linked directly to the eminence gris and who have actually a direct ear of the head of state. Once such happens, you begin even to predetermine judgments to the extent that a judgment that passes under the armpits of the president unnoticed can cause, of course, substantial backlash.
You're linked to the PPDA.
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me bring it back now to the reality.
Sorry.
I wonder what...
I think this has been a beautiful show.
I wonder what Captain Francis W. make of this, because in your other life you're actually in deep state. Back in the day, you were so much embedded in it, so you understood.
I was in the state.
No, it was in the state.
Yes. I think we should separate the deep from the state.
You know, in your other life, you're in deep state.
The deep state is Elon Musk.
But you see, when the Supreme Court pronounces itself the way it did, and then, you know, and the Chief of Defense Forces says, no, a person like Besigye will not be released unless he comes kneeling down and then comes to apologize, or maybe in the coffin. And he doubles down today in Tarehe Sita. He says, you know what, we're not happy.
Well, you want me to discuss my children
I'm not
taking sweets from each other?
No, listen. Your children are not Chief of Defense Forces. I'm talking about serious stuff.
What I'm saying, I want you to separate that one.
You know, it's inseparable. So long as if you have given them a role of Chief of Defense Forces, then we shall cease looking them at the children.
You know.
I mean, this is pretty serious.
Listen. In the world, there are certain people who fall in certain categories. And I don't have time to discuss those. My time is here. And I've enjoyed discussing what the Supreme Court did and the technicalities in there. Personalities I find rather...
No, it's not a personality.
Maybe the statement. By the way, he's a Chief of Defense Forces. I know a little thing or two about him. I know the fascinations that he has, the role model kind of leadership that he takes. He takes Egypt very seriously. particularly the current leadership. And he enjoys benchmarking. Let me tell you, when the current leadership took over from Morsi,
Assisi,
the establishment of military trials of civilians, because you see, Morsi had established a substantive cross-sectional command structure of youth brigades right from grassroots that had actually taken siege of Egypt, to the extent that it was going to be impracticable for national courts even to handle such criminality as ensued during that period. So you would find that a multiplicity of civilians were actually tried by the Army General Court Martial. Several of them. Another example was also taken in Tunisia, after, of course, the Arab Spring against Ben Ali. Let me tell you, those are very enticing procedures. We only need to tell the CDF that those procedures actually, the conditions in Uganda do not warrant that kind of thing. And it is a debate. And for me, under the precincts of free speech, he's free. Because this is a guy who has lost a court. A whole court is running an army, and clearly is not aware whether if there is any criminality by any of the soldiers, they have got a disciplinary procedure. Because what the makeshift that the court left for disciplinary purposes has not had a legislation that can put it in place. So you know that he's also left almost without
how to handle problems in the army.
So he must definitely complain. Now, and how do you complain? It has to be public. He must restore also order.
But Mukasambide, we are civilians. We should not try people in the military. Let's go ahead.
No. You have actually opened a dimension that I didn't understand. That in running the affairs of the military, if they have taken away your court and you have issues, where do you run to?
You can't run to the magistrate court suing a soldier for running with
there's
boots.
a problem.
Now, let me tell you something, and by the way, I want to say this. Unfortunately, this problem of military courts is not only in Uganda.
Yes.
It's all over. You know, when I was working in Nigeria, Rawlings got former presidents and shot them. All right? And people in countries like my friend, the King Leopold, went to Congo and cut everybody's hands off. So even the colonial masters used that kind of method to make the natives do what they wanted. And by the way, this happened in Karamoja here during the colonial time. And in fact, the British advised then the Prime Minister not to take in the man President Amin, who took over. He told him he had done a lot of atrocities in Karamoja. So these things have happened before. And it happened even in Zanzibar, if you remember. Even here, 1938. Yeah, here it happened. Coffee farming in Buganda was the subject coffee farming, they used military warfare. Yes. That's why they called it. So these things have been there. The question is, because of this nuisance that we're talking about, we want something better now. And to me, and since we've come to this very nice program, we would like Ugandans to now understand we must build a better structure, both in the army and in the civilian courts. And we would like to thank the Supreme Court for having opened our eyes with this judgment. And the things that are going on, because I listened to the Attorney General saying, listen, what I'm going to, this is something new, this has not happened before, there's no precedent. So what he's going to do is going to take the cases to the DPP. They are going to work together with the army. They are going to work together with the courts and find a solution to this problem. So in my sincere, we should not really fret about this. We should find a quick solutions to answer a lot of questions which are being asked by people. And some people have now gone to court. That's fine. It's there. They are free to do so. But I think what we should have learned from this, whenever we have experts, our experts who are lawyers now, who are judges, and they tell us something, we should think about it. And sometimes the method of pronouncement should also be gauged. So that I could say the same thing in a different way. And I think the British, one man who taught me, my masters told me, you can say half empty and half full if you have a glass of beer. One sounds better than the other. Is it they half full or they half empty? So the question is, I could have said the same thing the president said in a different way.
One is pessimistic, one is optimistic.
And by the way, you know, I don't know why, particularly us on the opposition, we have run amok. There is a brisk appreciation of the judgment, almost as if we find it as a whip against the government. But let us also know that the same court will take a decision in late February next year on a presidential petition. We should hold them in the same regard. Because because there are people who are just making analyses that are myopic.
That finally the court has...
Now, once we hold that the court is good, so that term goodness must now, it must sail up to late February.
The Chief Justice said it the other day. I am not going to talk about the people who have made some funny statements about me as a person, or even this court, but I think we should have a little bit of discipline, the way we consider our courts. And by the way, I've been to a lot of courts. These people, when they're in the court, they have got fantastic decorum, and decorum is very good, even the way they dress. So I think that decorum should even come outside, because some of them have become political lawyers. They are using this for political purposes, and I think that is wrong.
Okay, gentlemen, hold on to your points, because we're going to take a break, and On the Spot we'll be right back. Welcome back to On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara, and my guest this evening, Honorable Captain Francis Babu and Honorable Frederick Mukasa Mbide, and we're discussing the ramification of the Supreme Court decision. Now that Dr. Kizza Besigye and others are still in jail, and yet we have this kind of pronouncement, what do you make of that? What should have happened? Because it looks like their justice is actually delayed, and in that way also denied.
Now also there are times also, like the Honorable Captain has said, I think there are times when also we lawyers begin to answer to gallery demands. The excitement of the gallery. When a decision of court is made, it is not made in contemplation of the presence of the General Court Martial, for example, in court. They are parties to an appeal. Certainly Dr. Besigye isn't one. He's only beneficiary of the decision.
That's right.
But people want to create analysis as if he has already won his case and they are still holding him. So there is a decision made by a court having an effect on certain persons, including Dr. Kizza Besigye, that are being held in court, in prison, pursuant to trials that have actually been adjudged improper within the meaning of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Now, arrest and the trial are two different things. The manner in which he was arrested, I don't think that was the subject of any Supreme Court appeal. No. He was arrested by unknown people. Up to today, police can't claim they arrested him. The army does not succinctly equally claim. He was arrested by, you know, the Haitians call it the wanton machotes, or the Gestapo, secret police.
Are you talking about the Papa Doc?
Yes, Papa Doc.
The Gestapo.
by Papa Doc. So he was arrested, and clearly he's suspected of criminal wrongs. Now, court has clearly given a decision on trial, not on the suspicions and arrest. So if you want the person to be tried as quickly as practicable, there are, of course, administrative procedures one goes through. If they are not done as quickly as practicable by the state, then there are applications we must do. They are within. For example, habeas corpus, adjudicendum. You now make sure you apply to the High Court
for him to be brought, whether dead or alive.
Dead or alive. Because today you must now behave in such a way that you don't even know where he is. I have a client, for example. He has been placed in police custody for over 48 hours. Yet the framers of the Constitution said, no, since you are still innocent until court decides, your liberties are available in the same measure
even
as the liberties available.
Even when it is a capital offense?
Yeah, all. So what must be done is, for me, if it is now 72 hours, 120 hours, hey, you apply for unconditional release before a court. Let this fellow be released. Because you can only be imprisoned upon a trial. Now, where Besigye is being imprisoned without trial, then those procedures also should ensue. The second one is, of course, goodwill by government. In my opinion, I don't find any problem in government releasing and rearresting him the same way they should have. Because, for example, it is now really lackadaisical that you can still have a person in prison when actually judgment was taken against the Attorney General himself. So the procedural processes not
but well, the Supreme Court is not saying you are innocent.
Yes, that is it.
That's
so
what
you cannot
remember.
It is
not saying
it is foolhardy for anybody to believe that he should walk home.
He's saying a competent court should handle the matter.
So the trial exists. So he must now be before a court where he can obviously be in a position to apply for bail and do this and that. And so I think, like the captain, and I have loved his submission, the idea of now trying to drum up support from the gallery of our cause against the other person's cause, which is government, in my opinion, will have a prognostic problem in February. If we are saying that our courts versus the government, has been the nature of us. The day our courts give a decision against us, let us also accept.
But that has been the nature. That has been the nature of Uganda. When the decision is against you, the court is biased. When it is for you, then the court is okay.
Because now we are moving as if it is our courts. It is in the same government.
The good thing that some of them, including the Chief Justice, I think they are hitting retirement.
Yes.
Before
I think beyond the 18th, he will not take a decision.
And by the way, I think we need to be a little bit more disciplined as Ugandans. We must have etiquettes. We must respect our leaders, both in judiciary and in government. And we can tell them, I agree, I liked what he said. If I don't agree, I say I don't agree with you. I don't have to be indisciplined against you. And this is exactly what the Chief Justice said. You can disagree with what has been, but that's our judgment. That's what we have decided. We are learned, and that's what we've done. Now, even the president, listen to him and say, Mr. President, thank you very much, I don't agree with you. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the most important thing, how do we work together and have a dialogue of respect? In this country, we are losing. By the way, there's a lot of disrespect in this country.
Too much.
And this disrespect is getting out of hand. You get a young man going on social media and abusing the king, for example. You get somebody telling a blatant lie publicly, and he's you get people clapping for him. So we need to sit down and review. And by the way, when you talk about the president talking about the people who have crossed the line, I want to talk about our behavior as Ugandans. Lee Kuan Yew had 3 points. One of them was meritocracy, having people who have got the merit to be in a place. The second one was pragmatism, and the last one was one word only: honesty. Can we be honest?
If you carry that weighing scale into politics now, a lot of people won't step there.
Are you with me? Can we have honesty? No. You know why? We're not honest for you to be a different person, but for the purposes of this country, our children and our grandchildren, so that they can say, our parents left a country which has got a foundation of a real human. We are human beings. We are not animals. We must behave in a certain way.
Honorable Frederick Mukasambide, what would be the other channel that the president could use if he wanted to restore the military court and then the Supreme Court agrees with him? Would it to go to Parliament and have some kind of a constitutional amendment and then use the law to establish there? Isn't that possible?
Ideally, of course, it's a two-pronged approach. Under the current provision, the president can also establish a substantive court. But it would be, given, of course, the advisory orders of court, it would be better if an amendment of that article also was administered in order to establish a fully-fledged division of the Army Court Martial, of the High Court. And that would be now...
Would that require a referendum, or maybe just saying...
There is no entrenchment under that article, so you don't need a referendum. You just need a decision to be taken. Of course, we have a problem, like the Honorable Captain has said. The quality of political leaders that we have now, capacity to comprehend those matters as quickly as practicable is also a very big problem. There was a time, and you see, you remember we lost a member of parliament. I wouldn't be talking about him of Kawempe North. There was a time I saw when he had just been elected. There was a young man who took a picture with him, and he put on his status that I have had a memorable moment. We have shared words of wisdom with the Honorable Segirinya. Now I started thinking, if this boy has received wisdom from him, what did he have before receiving such wisdom from? So for me, I know that there is a problem because of the border politic. You, the intellectuals, are now shunning leadership and politics. And you find that now the majority of members of parliament are actually voters.
They should be tried in the military, those who are shunning.
You see, the problem you have, gentlemen, is that you think to serve Uganda and serve it well, you must be in politics.
No. Yeah. But we are saying decision making.
But you should also understand that you can contribute to your country in a certain forum, in a certain platform, or even much better, not necessarily being in elective politics.
It is true. Okay. But you see, we are now grappling.
You're right.
Okay.
We are grappling over, because Uganda seems to think that for you to be assisted, you must be represented. That the disabled must have a lame person to definitely represent them. Everywhere, including cabinet. So you are creating a corridor of disability serving each other. For me, I thought it would be a minister of agriculture would be the presidential advisor on agriculture. Should be that person competent on agriculture matters.
But when you're swearing, that's what you say.
Yes.
You're going to give him counsel.
Yes. So you now get somebody from the ghetto and becomes your advisor on ghetto affairs. But this is a victim. A victim cannot advise you. You need now somebody who is not in the ghetto, because that is the person that knows how to survive the ghetto. So if you want advice, you don't pick victims. You don't go to Mulago Hospital, what, to pick fellows that are victims of HIV to advise you on prevention. It is very, very unlikely that they are seized with capacity to prevent. So because of shunning leadership and politics by the intellectuals, you end up being taxed by those that are ignorant about what you're going through. I don't know, the minister is here. If the Honorable Captain is here, if he was a minister in a ministry that is in charge of, for example, establishing a robust Uganda Airlines, I know it wouldn't look the same way.
No.
Because he has knowledge, he has capacity, he knows what. But now you get some fellow who is there, he has extreme knowledge on cattle keeping, and he's the one now to decide. So, sorry. I am telling you, intellectuals, get back into the political arena. Otherwise, if you have a parliament full of voters, of course, and you have got now voters voting for their own, then we are going to have a country where...
For you to be able to have some kind of breakthrough in anything you're doing, you must have competence, passion, and skill.
Yes.
Merit.
Yeah, but passion is also very important. Interest and passion is very important.
Be patriotic. But for us, actually, you know, for me, the reason why I am almost a honorary member of PLOU, yes, it is because patriotism must not be partisan. All of you must be patriotic to your country. There is no way that you should find political leadership fancy that is when you would join. It is a call. The calling is loud. Guys, get into the political arena and save this country.
Kamara,
it's good
you're talking about one word here. The word is leadership.
Yes.
The leadership is a complete study in management, a very big study. And therefore, you must understand, we want leaders. We're not looking for entrepreneurs, or we're not looking for tender entrepreneurs.
Yes.
We're looking for leaders that are going to excel and have that meritocracy we're talking about. They're going to have pragmatism, where they're going to take this country forward, and they're going to be honest about this country. Those three words, MPH. Let me tell you, it was given to Lee Kuan Yew by a man in China. Can you believe it? You remember the short man in China who brought about capitalism in China? That is the man who told Lee Kuan Yew what to do. We can do it. We've got the ability to do it. We've got good leaders. Kamara, if you go back to the old kings in this country, to get leaders in their courts, they used to go from village to village looking for leadership. They never just gave you leadership like that. They went on a leadership drive, and they got good leaders. We are now talking about leaders. Parties, multi-parties, are supposed to give us two things: a program, what they are going to do when they get into government, and the second one, to give us leaders. They are the ones who are supposed to go on leadership drive. So what you are talking about now is leadership. Are we putting leadership in their right places? Are we putting square pegs in round holes, or are we putting... This is where the problem is. And if we can get rid of this attitude, we can change this country. This country, all it requires, all of us, one word. I'm going to give you another one word: unite this country. This new sense,
because I'm also told there's a saying that the people who are bad is not only those who abuse, maim, or kill, but including those who stand by and watch and let it happen.
Correct. Correct. In fact, those are more dangerous, the ones who stand and let it happen.
Yes.
Because they're supposed to help us. By the way, we have brilliant people in this country who can be fantastic leaders. And and by the way, if I was the one, I would even remove this thing. If people are talking about tribes and whatnot, yes. I'll call you Ugandans, and the best Ugandans become the leaders. Full stop. Like what Nyerere did in Tanzania.
Gentlemen, we're almost coming to the end of our program tonight, and I'm going to ask you, Honorable Captain Francis Babu, to give us your concluding remark tonight.
My concluding remark is for all Ugandans. First of all, we have to thank the Supreme Court. They did a good job. They have opened our eyes. We've learned something. Another point, the president also has got his view. We are building this nation, and we're building it brick by brick. A lot, by the way, what we did with the Supreme Court was putting a brick on building this nation. So the president also says, no, there's something missing. Let's talk to him. Let's not vilify him. Let's talk to him and listen to him and give him our views politely. Not to go out there in the gallery because you want to get votes in 2026. Let us talk about our country, and let us respect our leaders. And anybody who has been insulting the people in the justice, in judiciary, shame on you. These are not people you should insult. These are people you should talk to if you want to learn. These are our people. We should respect them. And I have a lot of respect for judges, a lot of respect for lawyers. Until you behave yourself, you behave yourself out of that loop. A lot of Ugandans actually want to see the best of this country. They want to see this country come up. They want their children to have a good future. So posterity should be the answer.
Thank you.
And I would like us to have good leadership.
Honorable Frederick Mukasambili.
Yeah.
Parting short.
Yes. I associate myself with the views of our senior leader. Members of the public, both that consider yourselves opposition or the contrary, today the dichotomy is clearly convoluted. It's not known whether one is opposition or you don't even sometimes know what you are opposing.
I'm sorry, I have to laugh.
Some people don't even know whether they are opposing Uganda.
For the moment, they don't know.
Or a government.
The original settings.
Yes. So we shall take them back to factory settings.
Yes.
I can tell you that we must, first of all, cut down on this. Honour Captain has called it a nuisance. That you non-eloquent talk. For or against. By the way, talking against you non-eloquently is as equally bad as somebody also doing praise and worship of a wrong thing, you know, the popinjays of some sort. It is important that Ugandans get back to the root of analysis. I am inviting the intellectuals get back into positions of authority. We know that the ground has been completely convoluted. It is now money. Actually, we are now heading to politics.
Oh, by the way, I just want to warn you,
yes.
This time money might not work. People are very annoyed. And in fact, you might see more independence than political parties.
That will be my prayer, and it will be answered. Otherwise, when you look at the population, you know, they have a problem. You remember the Pavlov's theory of classical conditioning, where he used to give food to dogs at a certain prescribed time, 4 p.m. You ring a bell, you give them food. It conditioned the mentality of the dogs to the extent that they started salivating every 4 p.m. To the extent that even when it rang the bell, he rang the bell, gave them no food, they still salivated. I can see voters salivating towards this election. Stop. Let people stop playing with your brains. You can allow them to play with your stomachs, but let the brains be a no-go zone. That is the best way we shall create a country. And if the analysis of the Honorable Captain has been heard, in my opinion, I will rest very well when the population begin to vote for people that can work than people who can pay in order to be voted for.
Man with the gift of the gab, the eloquent Frederick Mukasambidi, thank you so much. And Honorable Captain Francis Babu, thank you so much, gentlemen, for having added value to this platform.
Thank you.
And sometimes we in Uganda, we may disagree, maybe exchange very hot words, but I believe it's not that because we hate each other. I believe because we love our country more. Good night and God bless Uganda.